Hey guys, my guest tonight is David Bender, and together we're going to be discussing ghost hunting and logical explanations. Be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey guys, how's everybody doing today? Almost there to the weekend. What did I do to Jack? Look, is it weird? Okay, there we go. Unexplainable things to Jack today. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. 45 strong up and down the state, which means we can help you out if you have a paranormal need. We may not be able to get to you right away because California is a big state, but we will get someone even to call you to help you out until we can. That being said, if you're watching from Facebook today, and a lot of you are, and you haven't done so already, please feel free to hit that follow button because we're always looking for followers. And if you like what you see here tonight, please be sure to hit that like button and the happy faces and the hearts and just show us some love. Show us some love. Because what that does is that puts us up higher in the FYP on Facebook and the computer moves us out to more people. And that being said, if you have somebody in the house that you might want to share the show with, feel free to do that. Or like I said, we're looking for more and more followers. YouTube, same thing. If you haven't subscribed yet, please be sure to do that. There's over 800 videos sitting on YouTube, and they're all different topics. And I have them put into categories. If you like UFOs, UAPs, there's a category for that. If you're into cryptids, there's a category for that. And if you're a big fan of Psychic Nancy Matz, she's got her own folder too. So check out our YouTube page. Again, likes, follows, and all that good stuff, because that puts us up high in their FYP as well. All right, if you want to find us, you can find us on Facebook under California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, California Haunts Ghostly Events, the Sacramento Seers, SEERS, as in Greek Seers. You can find us there. You can also find us on TikTok under California Haunts. You can find us on Twitter under California Haunts. YouTube, California Haunts Radio. It would be youtube.com/@California Haunts Radio. Instagram, Ghosty Gal, all lowercase. And I believe Twitch, we are Cal Haunts. Okay, that being said, I've got a good show lined up for you today. Real excited. I've known this gentleman for years, and I have a lot of respect for the way he runs his paranormal team. In fact, I have to admit that we base a lot of the way we run our paranormal team on what I learned from his paranormal team. So I'll let him introduce himself and all that good stuff. So without further ado, let me get this going here. Push my buttons. That's the right button. Hey, I got the right button. First try for everything. All right, so here we go. Let me bring Dave on in. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm tired, but I am doing well. Hanging in there.
I'm tired too myself.
Ready for the I'm having a little bit of a break coming up, so it'll be nice.
Yeah. So tell everybody about you, because you've been on here before, obviously, but for the newer people that are here, tell us about you.
Well, I first got started in the paranormal back in Montana, where I'm from. My family is Native American, and we spent a lot of time in tradition talking about ghosts, spirits, hauntings, kind of like talking about the weather. So it was commonplace for us. And back when I got started doing investigations, there weren't all the TV shows, and the internet wasn't even around at that point. So I saw a special on TV one day and thought, I could do that. So that's kind of how I got started. Is I just took a bunch of equipment that I had around the house, an outdoor thermometer, a few different things, a camcorder, and started investigating places there. Not knowing at all what I was doing. And it wasn't until I moved to California, ended up joining a team that We got really excited. We were going to do things, but it never really panned out. So that's when I eventually formed my own group at the time,
Mm-hmm.
back in 2001. And through more trial and error, we kind of developed our own protocols over time for experiencing the paranormal and investigating places. And then eventually we got to the point where once we stopped trying to prove things to people, that's when it became really easy. And it's kind of been going ever since. We take a break here and there, and then we kind of get pulled back in, and then we stop. And so now we're back in and doing more. So we're just still out there, searching for things that go bump in the night, and mostly trying to help families with kids that are experiencing issues that, they're having being scared at night in their homes. So that's my main focus and emphasis at this point.
Awesome. Now, it makes me laugh when you talk about the way you started out doing this. I think what a lot of people don't realize is you really don't need all that fancy equipment.
No. I'm not that big on the equipment side of it, because I think it can be a crutch for some people. And I think starting out, some people really have that need to have something that they're doing and feeling like they're contributing. And I think a lot of times the places you go to, they feel the same way, like the homeowners or the business owners really want to see you doing something.
Yes.
So they really want to see the equipment that they've seen on TV and, get an idea of what it's like. So I think a lot of the times it helps placate them a bit. And sometimes it'll help them feel a bit more comfortable when we come in to see the equipment, to know that, that's kind of what they know and what they've seen.
Yeah, we've come in contact with that, where we've gone in with what we don't have all that fancy stuff. We have a few fancy items, but nothing really, really to write home about. And I know we've gone into investigations where the customer or the client was disappointed.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't have this? You don't have that? We don't need that. We don't need that stuff to do the job. Just like early on when I put this team together, I'm looking at the price of thermometers, and then one time they used those air conditioning thermometers. They were like $80.
Yeah.
And I started searching through eBay, and I found these cooking thermometers with the probe. And the only difference is like 1 or 2 degrees in the way they measure, and they work the same way, and they're $7.
It's only as good as the person that's using it. So you can have the fanciest piece of equipment that's really expensive, but if you don't know how to use it, it's not going to do any good. I'd rather have basic equipment that people can use and understand and know what they're doing with it. But again, you don't really have to have that kind of stuff. You can have a digital recorder or camcorder. Well, camcorder. I'm dating myself, but and just basic EMF and those kinds of things, and really get good results. I mean, it's also based. What is the end result? What are you there to do? Is it confirmation? Is it proof? Is it, what's the purpose of it? So it doesn't really require all that equipment. It's the people that really make the difference with any investigation.
Now, talking about proof and all that, tonight we were going to talk that, I want to talk about the logical part of paranormal investigating. The part where we go through as investigators, and I know everybody hates the word debunk, but we go through and try and debunk as much as possible. And you're really good at that.
Well, I think part of it too is, I have a social work background, so spending time with people and talking with them and really getting to understand what's happening. If you truly listen to people, they will open up to you, and then you can pretty much do what you need to. So there really isn't that need for all the fancy high-tech equipment per se. But we're really just trying to figure out what it is that's happening and what are the things that are getting in the way that could explain what it is that's happening.
Well, I was talking to somebody last night, psychic Linda Salvin last night, and she was talking about how she's done, she's gone into people's houses to do work. and she prefers doing it over the radio and things like that. She over the phone and all that. But she goes in occasionally to do this work, and she was saying how she thinks logically enough that the woman's got scratching in her walls or scratching on her ceiling, and then she asked her, "Do you by chance have rats or squirrels or something in there?" And of course, the client's going to go, "Oh no, 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 no." And then I pointed out, I said, "Yeah, that's when we whip out those fluorescent, wands to go in and take a look." I mean, to what extent do you guys go crawling through the attics and whatnot to try and find this stuff to check it out to make sure?
If necessary, I think a lot of the times the information that's why we use a prelim, and the prelim is really important because we don't just look at what's going on in the location; it's what's going on with the people. Because a lot of times there are certain mental health conditions that can look like paranormal activity. Are they on a bunch of different medications? Are they using drugs and alcohol excessively? There's a lot of things you want to kind of tease out, because if you don't tease those things out, then it's really hard to say what is mental health versus what's paranormal, because they can look very similar in nature. So we have to rule all those kinds of things out. Do you live by an area that there's train tracks? So there's a train coming by. There are cars driving by. I know when Anne does her EVP sessions, she will call out if someone talks or if someone coughs or sneezes, excuse me, like that, so that when she's reviewing the audio, it's on there. So it's not, automatically assume it's something paranormal in nature. So all those things have to be taken into consideration when you're going into a specific location.
Well, I was just thinking as you were talking about Anne with the audio, I know it took a few years before wash machines can sound like voices when they're on. And so I've turned around and put together a data bank of these sounds so I can compare them when I get them back in here. And I think it's really important to do that. And I think what a lot of people don't realize with paranormal investigating, they see it on TV, but they don't realize like some. I don't want to knock the younger teams, because they're on a learning curve just like we were all those years. But what they don't realize is how much work it actually is and how much responsibility we have going into somebody's house and talking to them.
Yeah, I mean, they're entrusting us to come in, and a lot of times they're telling us information that they're not going to tell anybody. So they're putting a level of trust in us. So we have to really take that responsibility when we go in and talk to families or businesses for that matter. Excuse me. And a lot of times it can be things like, are you picking up radio waves? Because you might get talking from that you can't necessarily see. Are you near a tower? Are you getting such high EMF within a location that it's causing, hallucinations, trouble sleeping, nausea, all those kinds of things. And then as soon as we have them unplug everything, they sleep fine, and then it stops.
Well, even with the houses, I mean, you go in looking to see what material the houses are made out of too. And how thin those walls are, because they could be hearing voices from outside as well.
If you have an apartment complex and the walls are really thin, you're going to pick up on whatever is on the other side of the wall. If they have their radio or their TV on, even if it's low, you're going to hear that. It's going to sound like voices, especially if it's late at night. I have my TV on, but that's very common. So a lot of those things have to be looked at, especially during a prelim. That's why the prelim is so important, is to go out and get an idea of what the location's like. What kinds of things could you factor in during that time that you're going to pass on to the, we call them debunkers. So what are we going to pass on to them for them to kind of be aware of and look out for? So they can either recreate that or, have an explanation for a particular sound or activity that they're experiencing.
One thing I always found interesting, and I did a couple cases like this, was a middle apartment. You like one of those condo style apartments that'll have like two apartments on the sides, one on top. And I always found it interesting because people were complaining that they had headaches and they were hallucinating in these places. And then when you go ahead and go in there with the EMF meter, it's like it's on fire because they're the one that's in the middle.
And one of the things I found that actually helps with that is it's a mineral called shungite. I'm not sure if you've heard of shungite.
I haven't.
Shungite is it's a carbon-based material. It's naturally occurring, and it's black, and you can purchase natural shungite, and it actually blocks EMF.
Oh, that's cool.
We've done experiments where you have any item that gives off EMF. You take your EMF detector, you place it in front of it, and it will show how high it's going. As soon as you put the shungite in front of it, it cuts it out almost down to zero.
Oh, that's cool. I got to remember that. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Another question I have is cell phones. Do you allow cell phones on investigations at all? For your team to carry them?
I allow them to have them. We don't want them to have the sound on and we don't want them obviously going off. And of course, when you're getting ready to do something like an EVP session, you want to make sure all that stuff is off or away so that you're not picking up on the vibrations or anything like that. So, I mean, sometimes they're necessary. If there's an emergency, something happens, you want to have something, there.
Right. The other thing we noticed, I forget which investigation it was we did, but certain motion detectors will be triggered by cell phones. And we found this out. So I forget who the investigator was, but she kept getting text messages. Every time she got a text message, the light would come on the motion detector.
Yeah, so that obviously it's picking up on that signal that's coming into the cell phone.
Yeah.
That would be interesting just to have it as an experiment, for people to see that too, because I'm sure that there's been times where families have probably had a motion detector, like you said. They're walking around the house, their phone rings, and then it goes off, and it kind of startles them because they're not sure why that's happening.
And the other thing we discovered, and this is when we were still just beginning, doing this stuff, was you cannot get EMF meters close to thermometers or anything like that. You have to keep them. You have to keep a distance away because the temperatures will get all wacky and the EMF will go off.
Yeah, and it's a lot of trial and error. It's you get certain pieces of equipment, you work with it, and over time you really get to know the equipment. Like we've been using the what's it called? It's the one with the screen and the little pixel guy on it.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the name of it.
The stick guy, yeah.
Stick guy thing, yeah.
Stick guy thing, yeah.
We got to stop being so scientific for everybody. And you get some interesting results on there. And I think a lot of that stuff is helpful to have. I mean, I think it helps. It gives people a visual when they're doing things. Just like we have a thermal camera as well. So I think those are helpful tools as far as when you're mapping out a location, having them go through a location and seeing, okay, did you pick up something? And I think a lot of it's correlating everything together to get a result, as opposed to one piece of equipment picking up something randomly. Just like the natural tri-field meters that don't pick up on the appliances and things like that. We had the other traditional EMF detectors, and of course, they were picking up on everything. So, and we didn't know at the time that, that was the refrigerator, that was, the microwave. So it's a lot of trial and error for a lot of people, I think, when they're doing this, but utilizing that in conjunction with the debunking specifically can be a big help.
Absolutely. I remember nights going through my house, with the EMF meter and seeing what would trigger it. Then I take meticulous notes and mentally put that up here and go, okay, that's the refrigerator, on the other side of the wall. This is this going off, and this is the wiring over here. So that helps. It helps to train people that way, to say, hey, look, just take this thing home, take it through your house and see what triggers it, so you know what's going to do it.
And we would do trainings with new people like that. We would take them to locations, let them try out the equipment, and show them those kinds of things that they might experience, so that they can become more used to or familiar with those things as we would investigate. So the more comfortable they got with it, the better use of it they would make with it.
And like you say, it is a lot of trial. In the beginning, it's a lot of trial and error for people. Big learning curve for people to learn how to use that equipment, figure out what does trigger it, and like I said, with the sound and everything, to like get recordings of different things. Like you say, a TV in another room will sound like somebody talking, even if it's down low, because the recorders are so sensitive.
If you hold a digital recorder in your hand, you can pick up your pulse. Depending on the type of digital recorder you have.
Used to pick up Van's heartbeat all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So then when you go in and when you go to debunk, what's one of the things you debunk? Like I've seen people I've seen other teams take apart doorknobs just to see if there's something wrong with the doorknob.
I wouldn't recommend taking apart somebody's doorknob unless you have somebody that really knows what they're doing with doorknobs. But and we've had people that there was an investigation years ago. This guy was super, super skeptical of everything, and there was a sound that was recorded of a door that closed that wasn't able to, and he could not wrap his mind around it. He stayed up for days trying to figure out how that happened because he could not grasp the fact that something like that had happened. I think a lot of the things that we look at is heating, air conditioning, sounds within the home. It really depends on what it is that they're experiencing. So if they're experiencing certain smells or they're seeing things, it really depends. So based on what they tell us, that's kind of will lead us in a direction to look at, medications, mental health, even regular health issues. Anything like that can kind of be something that we would start with. Anything outside the home, there are trees nearby that animals could climb on. So if they're hearing things in the attic, can we go in the attic and take a look in the attic and see what is it they're describing? So a lot of it's figuring out exactly what it is that they're experiencing that we can go in and see what is causing that. Is there a rational explanation for that particular event or sound? A lot of times there is, and then sometimes we can't find it. It might be something that's in the walls of the home itself that we can't get to. It could be, animals that are in the walls that may not be right then and there at that particular point. So it really depends on what it is that they're experiencing, and then how can we look at that and find a plausible rationale for that. And that's where the debunkers will come in. That's their primary job, is to go, okay, this is what they're experiencing. What could it possibly be? Now let's go take a look at that and see if we can figure that out. So they're really they're more like the detectives. Whereas everybody else on the team is kind of doing their own thing as far as the equipment and the walkthrough and things like that. So it's nice how these pieces can fit together too.
Right. Do you try when you're recruiting on your team to get people that know construction and things like that?
It's helpful. I think I've always said that I can teach you how to investigate. I can't teach you how to care. And I think you really have to care about what you're doing. You have to care about the people that we're going in to see. It just so happens that a lot of people from different industries and backgrounds will join. So it does help in those instances. I mean, I think we've had an engineer before who developed this amazing 20-page debunking form that was a little too much. They looked at everything, and there was just stuff in there that we kind of had to cut it down over time because it just was way too much. I'm not an engineer. I don't I don't know that kind of stuff, so I'm not measuring angles of in places and how far away from the railroad tracks or the whatever it is to see if that correlates to some kind of explanation. So, but I mean, I think it helps to have as many different kinds of people as possible because everybody brings something different to the team. You have police officers who, obviously they're good investigators.
Mm-hmm.
You have people that work in hospitals. They have big hearts. They care about people.
Mm-hmm.
Social workers, same thing. So I think, you have to have a variety of people, and teaching them how to investigate is easy. It's the other stuff that you can't really teach them that they have to have.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have that in them already. And I think that's what attracts people to this field, is that a lot of people care, about things that you can't see.
Right.
And for me, it's always comes down to, it's still like social work, even if it's not something you can see, because you still have to work with that family. And if you can get them to open up, like I said, they'll let you do anything you need to within that location.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when you guys start to, to look at things logically, how do you go about that? During the prelim, do you make like you say, do you make a list of things for those guys, for the debunkers to look at in particular? Or do you look at that during the prelim a little bit, then you hand it off?
Well, we have a list of questions, and it's standard questions we ask everybody. So there's a lot of things on there about mental health, history, medications, anything like that, recreational drug use, things that can kind of explain certain things. And then as they get into the things that they're experiencing, like if they're hearing things up in the attic, for example,
right,
we will make note of that. And that's something we can pass on to the debunkers ahead of time and say, hey, this is one of the things that they're saying that they're experiencing. It'll give them kind of some direction as to what to look at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If they're experiencing cold spots in the home, they know, okay, let me go check out the heating system and see if there's, something's wrong with it, or, whatever may be with that.
Mm-hmm.
So those questions and that prelim really does help set up the rest of the investigation, regardless of who's there.
Mm-hmm.
We like to go and also kind of get an idea what the location looks like, so we know how to plan for it. But the debunkers will also get a copy of the prelim, so they can go through those questions too, to kind of see what areas they may want to focus on. And then throughout the course of the investigation, we'll kind of talk about stuff as it comes up and troubleshoot things like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about your psychic team? Do they get any questions or any of that paperwork ahead of time or anything like that, or do they go in cold?
The people that are going to be sensitive for that night, they get nothing. We don't give them the prelim information. We don't give them anything because we want them to go in cold. Mm-hmm. And we let them do the walkthrough first initially because that's when they're at their freshest, mm-hmm. and that's when they're at their strongest. Mm-hmm. So we let them do that walkthrough initially as soon as we get there, so that they can do what they need to do. Because sometimes it's very taxing on them going through locations, especially if they're picking up on a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. So, but we want whatever information that they're getting to be not tainted from the prelim and put any kind of preconceived notions in their head before they do go in. So whatever impressions they're getting or information they're getting from the location, then they will sit down with the homeowner after they've done their walkthrough and share that information with them.
Okay. Are there any cases that you can tell us about where you guys had gone in and, done the whole debunking thing and were able to, say that it was from logical explanations?
I will give you one that I consider to be like the perfect case that we had.
Okay.
That, in my mind, this is how I would envision it working. All the different pieces working together. And I always get the parts of it wrong, but the general concept is what's important. Mm-hmm. We'd gotten a request from a family in Sacramento. It was a mom and a dad and 2 kids. And the mom was scared. She was being touched on her face at night. It was scaring her. It was waking her up. So, it's very paranormal from the sounds of it, that you don't, just from the sounds of that sounds like it's paranormal. So Anne happened to be the sensitive for that particular investigation. So, of course, she didn't go to the prelim. We didn't give her any of the information ahead of time. And we get to the location. She does her walkthrough. And we have a debunker actually follow the sensitive and record their impressions as they're going along. Because sometimes when the sensitive is walking through, whatever it is they're picking up on, that information can be helpful to the debunker as well, to kind of give them clues as to what they could look at as well. Mm-hmm. So went and did their walkthrough, and she went and sat down with the homeowner, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "So you're being touched on your face at night?" And of course, her eyes got really big, and she started to describe who she saw. And come to find out, it was her mother who had passed. And like I said, I get the next part incorrect all the time. And the debunkers had gone through and found a gas leak and I want to say an electrical issue, but again, I'm not. It's been a while.
Sure.
And it was bad enough to where we had them contact the fire department and PG&E, I believe. And after we had left, they actually came out and assessed the situation, told them they needed to move. So they moved out of the house, and sure enough, as soon as they moved, guess what? The activity stopped. She no longer got touched on her face at night. Mom, who had passed, was trying to get family's attention to get them out of the house.
Because the gas.
So it started off as something paranormal in that sense, but there was a rational explanation for the activity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
All of the pieces of the team worked together to make this situation work the way I would envision a perfect investigation working. You have something that's paranormal, you have rational explanations for that activity, and they worked hand in hand. And we got a letter from them about 6 months later thanking us for saving their lives and getting them out of there. So that to me would be like the perfect investigation. Did we get a lot of evidence that we could show people to indicate, it was paranormal and whatnot? No. But that wasn't the point. The point was the result. And I think a lot of times people get caught up in the situation. They want to prove, they want all this evidence that is going to blow people away. And for me, I'd rather have an investigation where we can do something like this and we get no evidence whatsoever that's paranormal in nature to show to people. Because the result is what was important. And that to me is why I do this. It's for those kind of results. It's not anymore. It's not to prove things anymore because people have already made up their minds one way or the other, whether or not they believe their place is haunted or not. They want confirmation. They want someone to listen to them. They want some kind of result. So that for me, that's at least in terms of what we do as a team, that's the perfect investigation.
Absolutely. That is, absolutely. When you do an investigation like that, or even let's say paranormal investigation that you guys are able to prove, I know with us, there's certain cases that we've done where we've come out feeling really good. It makes you feel good because you're helping people.
And that's the whole point. It's like that's why once we had that shift. You saw the Opera House photo that Ann got at Woodland Opera House.
Right.
And that kind of what started everything, because before we were dead set to prove everything to everybody. I mean, it was exhausting sometimes trying to get people to believe. And we got that photo and people, of course, right away said it was photoshopped. It was faked. Right. It was, we tried to recreate it. I was there that day when we got it. And at that point, the light bulb kind of went on. It's like, oh, I don't need to prove anything to anybody. Because there's people that are going to believe, there's people that aren't going to believe, and then there's people that are in between. Our job is just to give them information and say, here it is, you decide, because you already pretty much have. So it takes all the pressure off of you as a team, trying to go in and constantly trying to prove things to people that are either going to believe or aren't going to believe. So we go in, this is what we find, here it is, you decide. And I think we get better results that way too. Because I think people spend a lot of time trying to prove things to others, and they focus so much on that they lose sight of what it is that they're actually doing.
Right.
So, and it takes time. I mean, because when people start doing this, they all kind of start in the same place, trying to prove the paranormal exists, capturing that evidence, showing it to everybody else so that they can have that information. And it's not necessary because it's a you're never going to win that fight.
No.
So I think ever since we've started doing it that way, it's taken all the pressure off of us, and the investigations have gotten better because of that.
Right. I agree with you there. I think there's always going to be somebody out there, no matter what you get, how good it is, or how good you think it is. There's always going to be somebody out there that's going to, debunk that. It's somebody that wasn't with you on the case, which sucks because they don't know what actually transpired on that case. Like when somebody sends me, if another group sends me a picture or a video, and it's not obviously a web or something, a spider web that's obvious to see, I have no right really commenting on the video because I wasn't there. I don't know what transpired. I don't know what steps they took to not, I don't know whether poison the photo. You know what I mean? Compromise the photo or whatever. That's not my place to do that because all the time, doing this 18 years, and the people that have come after me for stuff or come after you guys for stuff saying, "Oh, it's all fake." I agree with you 100% on that, and that's what we do too. Now is we're just to the point now where we get what we get. People don't like it,
And the sensitives themselves, they all the new ones tend to worry about being right and wanting to get information right, and it's like. Stop putting all that pressure. It's just go in, do it how you do it. Whatever you get, and just let them know. And once they do that, I think it kind of takes the pressure off of them too, because the more that they do it, the more comfortable they get, the better results they're going to get. So it's really the biggest thing is time and experience. How long have you been doing it, and how much experience do you have with it, and how much trial and error have you put into it? There's so many teams out there that want to be right and they want to prove everything, and there's a niche for everybody, I think, especially now that the internet's been here for so long.
Do you think like out in the field, and Janelle was always good at getting photos, always good. So do you think there's people like investigating that have certain knacks, that are able to get certain types of things like photos and audio and whatnot?
Yeah, I think there's people that are naturally good at it. They just, it's a lot. It's practice. There are those people that come in, they have no experience really, and then they're really good at it. And there's that happens sometimes where you have people that are really good with certain things, and it's just a knack. They've never done it before, but we've had some really good people that come in that were good at debunking. That we really didn't think, okay, this is. But they had that ability. And then you get people that come in that are really good with the equipment, never really having done the equipment before, but they just seem to have this knack for doing it. A lot of times they have to learn the equipment over time, but there are those occasions where there are people that just come in and happen to pick up something right away, and they really take to it. So I think there are those people that have that ability.
Going along that line, EVPs, do you think that, I know Ann does a lot of your EVP work. I do a lot of my EVP work. I'm an empath. I do a lot of that work. Do you think it helps to have a psychic doing that?
I think it can, because I think a lot of the times there's that communication that can happen subconsciously. And a lot of times it can help direct the questioning that happens during those sessions. So I think it does help, especially even if you look at dowsing, it helps to have someone that has a connection already and they're getting that information, and they can kind of lead the process. And then it can go in lots of different directions depending on what information they're picking, they're perceiving or taking in. I think, like I said, there's a lot of teams that don't like sensitives, but I think it's just another piece. It's an important piece, because I think there's a lot of stuff that they do that you can't really prove to other people per se, but there's so much information that they get that is helpful with the process.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100% with that. It's like I like to tell people, when I walk into an old building and I've got a sensitive with me, I can at least tell who and what we're dealing with, who we're talking to, because you don't want to wave cell phones at somebody from the 1800s, because they're not going to have a clue what you're talking about. So it's much easier to get trigger objects and everything out, for somebody from the
Yeah.
1800s.
And I know that a lot of times when we go places, Anne is doing that already. She's going in, and I can tell when she's, she's experiencing the location.
Yeah.
And she gets that certain look in her eyes, and you can tell she's somewhere else. And, and that's what she does. I mean,
right.
So it can help, especially if we're just out and about. We're not really investigating per se, but she's still experiencing those locations no matter what we're doing. So it's so important. And I think there's a lot of people out there that, they want to just do the scientific piece of it. That's fine.
Right.
But there's so many other pieces that they could be doing that, could help them out so much more. It's just, taking that piece on and giving it a try. Because I never knew starting out that I was ever going to have the kind of teams that I would have. It just started off as me with a bunch of equipment, not knowing what I was doing in a location.
Sure.
So over time, you start to, bring people in, and they have these experiences, and it's like, oh, that could be very helpful. And then I think that's how those things kind of come about. And I'm sure you've had a lot of that with your team too.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Where you get people that have certain abilities and interests, and they add that piece to your team that, oh, I didn't have that before. And it's nice to have that.
Oh yeah. I've even found it with like cases, like you say, with dealing with children. There's certain members of the team that deal with children. And those are the people you like going out to deal with those cases because they can connect better.
I mean, I work so much with kids that they're drawn to me, whether they're, dead or alive. So that's just how it is. But I think everybody has their own, their own niche and their own area that they're comfortable exploring. And I think over time, seeing other people doing certain tasks, it opens up other people to maybe trying different things. Because I think you can get really comfortable with equipment, but if that's all you're really doing, that's where you're staying. There's other areas you might have sensitive abilities, but if you don't explore it, you're never going to know if it's going to be something that, you might be good at or want to do. So people will get comfortable and stuck in their routines, and sometimes we'll mix it up on them and say, hey, no, you're going to do this tonight. So something different than what they're used to. It's good to make them uncomfortable at times, because I think they tend to pay more attention when they're uncomfortable with doing something like that, because they'll get comfortable in a task. They're used to doing it. And then they're just kind of like, sometimes they'll, things don't get done the way it typically would. Whereas if they're doing something new, they have to focus on it more and pay attention to it more. So there tends to be more, it's more structured for them. They have to give their attention to it and do a better job with it. So sometimes it's fun just to really give them like total opposite ends of the spectrum tasks that other than what they're used to doing, and just see how they do.
Now, I've been out with you guys in the past, and at times you have used 2 psychics on staff or sensitives on staff. Are you still doing that, or how does that work?
A lot of times that will depend on the size of the location. So if it's a really big location, you definitely want 2 of them there so that they can kind of start. Because sometimes we'll have them start at opposite ends or different floors and then kind of work opposite, because everybody's different. So the sensitives will pick up information differently. So having that extra information to present can be helpful. Like I said, especially if the location is large. If it's a smaller location, we typically will use 1. But if the location's big enough and calls for it, then it makes more sense to have 2. And then I would like to have even almost 2 separate teams in a sense. Because then you can compare the information that both sets of teams are getting, as they switch. And sometimes that can be just interesting to see what they pick up. Because sometimes one team will get a certain set of information, the other team will get something totally different. So, and a lot of that has to do with, response. Is the activity responding to someone differently than the other person? Or, there's a lot of different things that go into it.
Right.
So Typically on those larger locations is where we tend to have more than one sensitive, unless they're training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you ever used a remote psychic before an investigation? Just somebody that would say, look at a picture of the building and let you know what they pick up, and then Anne goes in and or whatever.
We've had locations where actually Anne has done some remote psychic work if she wasn't able to actually be there physically. So sometimes she can actually step in and do some of that. I don't think a lot of the other senses are as comfortable with it, or they've practiced it as much. So I think she would be the one kind of to do some of that. But yeah, I mean, we've done some of that.
I always found it interesting because Nancy Matz does a lot of my remote stuff. Like I'll send her a picture of a house or building and say, look, can you see stuff going on here? I don't know if there's stuff going on, but let me know what you see out of this. And what I find interesting is that the accuracy is terrific. I mean, especially when Sabrina was on the team. And I remember Nancy would do these reads. I would never tell Sabrina what Nancy got. Sabrina would come in and they were almost verbatim with the stuff that was going on.
Yeah. And it's just trying a lot of different things like that and just seeing what's working and what's not. And again, it depends on location, it depends on time, it depends on a lot of different factors. How tired are you when you're going in? How far away is the location? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of different variables that come into play with that.
Hey, that's another question you just brought up: health. Now, do you feel that people with health problems should not do this? Because I mean, they're taking a pounding. I mean, some of these ghosts are relentless and wanting to touch you and all this other stuff. So, do you think people that have health problems should stay away from this, or they should come in, when they're feeling decent, or what do you think about that?
I think it depends on what kind of health problems they're having. If it's a chronic condition, maybe not. Obviously, somebody like if they have cancer or something where you're requiring treatments to where it can exhaust you and make you more tired, they may not necessarily want to. But if it's I've gone out after I've had surgery on my foot surgery or things like that, and I've been in locations where I'm physically tired, but I'm also able to still at least go in and kind of be there. So I think it really depends on the condition and the person. I mean, if they're able to do it and want to investigate, I don't think there's anything that really can stop them per se. Unless it's something that a condition that's really going to tire them out, or they're already exhausted and their immune system is weak, then that may be a time where they may not want to. But other than that, I don't think there's anything that can really stop people from investigating, if they have the ability.
I know with my congestive heart failure, I backed off on doing a lot of investigating. I'm like I'm at the command center with the monitors, keeping an eye on everything. But there are times when I do feel good enough to go in on some cases. But a lot of the time, if I'm not feeling up to par, I will stay away and just stay with the monitors.
Yeah, and that's what you kind of have to judge how you're doing, because I know we've had people with various conditions that have participated. There's times where they're just not able to, and times when they're really feeling good and they can go out and do it. So I think it's just them keeping an eye on how they're doing and monitoring that themselves and really seeing where they're at. And that it could change. Some days you're feeling really, really good, and there's days where like you said, you just can't, because you're physically not able to. So, but they also have to take care of themselves and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to, so that they have that option to be able to attend and participate.
Do you think, because we've been talking mostly about the logical side of investigating, do you think that needs to get out more to people, the public, as far as what we do as investigators, that we're going to look at both sides? We're not just going to come in and say, hey, you got a ghost here.
I think it's important. The problem with a lot of the shows is they don't necessarily show that side of it. And I think a lot of times, it's very powerful because that's what people see. That's what they think. So a lot of times it's educating people and saying, hey, there is a whole nother side of this that's logical, that looks at, rational explanations as opposed to just all paranormal. And I think it's something that I think a lot of teams could benefit from if they, allow themselves the opportunity to do it. Because I know before us, before we were doing it, there always seemed like there was, something missing. And I know for a long time we were investigating and we didn't have the debunking side of it. And it always felt like there was just something was missing, because you go to an investigation, nothing's happening. And I go, okay, this is it. You almost kind of feel empty in a sense. But once you add that piece in, it really complements everything else and kind of helps bring everything together, I think, like it did with that case that, I mentioned earlier.
Right.
So I think it's important for people to keep an open mind and look at, a variety of options. I know there's a lot of teams out there that don't use sensitives. There's a lot of teams that, only want to do equipment. There's teams out there that have, ordained ministers and priests on their teams and, delve into that side of it, which, we don't handle the demonic cases. That's not our forte. But yeah, I think it's something that a lot of teams, it would help bridge that gap that I think a lot of teams may have.
That probably answers my next question about debunkers. Do you think that, I know there's some debunkers that have open minds, about the paranormal, but there's also quite a few out there that don't have that open mind. How do you handle that when you get somebody on there that's just like this?
Well, I think it's funny because they're actually still there. You would think that someone who had such a hardline, skeptic would not want to do it at all. So it's interesting that they're even there at all to begin with, because we've had some. And I just keep it like, you know what, this is your function, do it the best, because I know they're going to give it their all, and I'll get really good debunking information from them. So it's still very useful. They don't have to believe in what the other side's doing and vice versa. I think I've had people that were sensitive that didn't really, couldn't understand the debunking side of it. Right. So they kind of stay on their sides and just kind of do what they do. And I think over time, they start to see things that happen that they can't explain, and it kind of brings them together a bit more. I think if they're on the team for any length of time, it's going to happen like that, because the debunker is going to experience something that they can't explain, and it's going to baffle them. The sensitive is going to see something natural that happens, and then they're both kind of going to realize, oh, it's not just me. I'm not stuck in this box where this is my function and there can't be any other possibilities. I think over time it's going to happen, and it has happened to where, those two sides will kind of mesh a bit. Not saying totally, but they can mesh to where they can kind of complement one another.
Fascinating. What do you say to people that want to start a team now? How should they go about it?
The good thing is there's so much information out there now with the internet. There's also a lot of bad information. I think I would start by finding a team out there based on where you are. See if they're accepting new members, check out the website, find out, what they do, how they do it. And if that kind of falls in line with your philosophy, contact them, reach out, because the worst thing they can say is no. I know that teams are always looking for people. So if you're passionate about this and this is something you really want to do, find a team and join and get started. That's what I had to do, because when I first moved to California, I joined a team and we did nothing. We would sit around, we would talk about things we were going to do, and we never really did anything. So at that point, that's when I broke off and formed my own team, and it attracts like-minded people that want to investigate. It's amazing how you have a team and all of a sudden you get all these people that want to join, and they have the similar interests. It's just going out there and making contact. The hardest part is, making that first contact with the team, because they want to put their good foot forward. They want They don't want to sound stupid. They don't want to sound crazy, but they want to have that excitement. And that excitement is what really does help a team, is when you bring somebody in new that's brand new and they're excited. They want to learn. They want to go out and do it. That's kind of where I'm at now, where I really enjoy those people, because that's how I was at one point.
Right.
Yeah, I was totally excited that there were people that wanted to do this just like I did. And we would go out and investigate, and it was enjoyable. My focus has shifted today, but that's the kind of people that I enjoy now seeing, is that those people that are new, that are really excited, and they have a passion for it. They want to learn. They want to do it. So they're easy to teach. And that's what if they want to join, they just need to send that email or make that call and just do it.
How many investigations do you guys average a year? Do you know?
Lately, not as many as we used to. It's just, you have a family, you have kids, and all of a sudden, things kind of slow down a bit. Right now, it's not. I can't say it's a lot right now. I know we used to average. I would say there, years ago when we were doing it quite consistently and all the time before kids, we were doing it pretty much every weekend at one point. At least 2 to 4 a month. I would say pretty regularly. Sometimes some months it would be, 6 to 8, depending on, the month and what the areas were that we were covering. So there was, and this is steady 4 years that we were doing that. Anne would get off work. She was constantly updating the website and contacting people and making connections and networking. And it's a never ending thing. Right. As you know, doing a radio show as much as you do. I look on there, I'm like, wow, she's got another 3 guests on there. I'm like, when do you sleep?
I don't. I don't, honestly.
So, you've got the team, and, you guys are doing your investigations, and, so it gets to be a lot. And we were a nonprofit. We were a 501c3. And I started that, and it was a lot of work. It was, board meetings and monthly meetings and team meetings and, prelims and investigations and evidence review. And, it was just never ending. And media stuff. And, I look back now and I'm amazed that we did as much as we did. So now, I'm a bit more picky about what I do. If it's something I want to do, if it sounds fun, I'll do it. But especially if it's a family with kids involved, I will do those. I will drop everything and do those. Those are the most important ones to me, is when, there's kids involved.
Absolutely. I agree. Oh, how can people find you?
Well, they can come to our website. It is www.benderparanormal.com.
Okay.
And like I said, my wife maintains that site. And if people are wanting to join, and I like teaching people too. I guess more how to investigate too. I like that side of it, making sure that they understand it. And I'm just, my background is in teaching too. So it's just kind of a natural thing that I do enjoy, teaching people how to investigate, how to go in, equipment, things like that. I remember we used to teach at the Learning Exchange when that was still around.
Right.
And those classes were fun because there were people that had a genuine interest that maybe not necessarily wanted to investigate. They wanted to hear the stories and places we'd been to. So that was, it was a fun time to be able to talk about locations and things like that we'd been to and explored. Stanley Hotel, Waverly Hills, places we'd been able to go to. So that was a lot of fun, just to be able to share that, because people, there's so many people that are interested in the paranormal. They all have stories, and they all want to hear the stories. And I think that's one of the biggest things too. And I think that's why a lot of families contact us, because they want us to hear their story. Because they don't want to tell just anybody so that they think they're crazy. They want to get their story out. It's cathartic in a way. If I can at least get this out, then they feel better about it.
Absolutely. Dave, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
Absolutely. All right. You have a great holiday and the rest of your evening.
All right. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you again. Bye. All right. Yep. I've known Dave for a long time, and I was on his team for a while, and he's a good guy. He's good people. Okay. Tomorrow, Nancy Matz will be with us, and we're going to be talking about the difference between ghosts and poltergeist activity. So that'll be something you want to tune into at 6:30 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. For those of you that are into solstice and are into Mercury retrograde, Nancy's going to be doing readings on Sunday for people that sign up, and that'll be a 10-minute up to 10-minute reading with Nancy Matz in a semi-private environment here on StreamYard. We're not going to be broadcasting out to Facebook or any place like that, so you'll have a semi-private room to hear whatever results she gets. This is one of those deals where, I can't talk today. Retrograde and solstice are kind of like New Year's, to where it's out with the old and in with the new. So you have the opportunity to look back on maybe something that you've been wondering about from the past, right now, or the future, or even maybe one of your deceased relatives comes in. But Nancy will do a reading on that. So if that's something you're interested in, visit the California Haunts Meetup page. It's California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team Meetup page. Go to events and you can find that reading. And I believe there's a link in the description for this show. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening.